Father Milan was the first priest to serve the Coptic community here in Australia, and he arrived in Sydney in 1969. I remember that it was a very joyful occasion in receiving the first priest who came by ship all the way from Egypt to serve the Coptic community here. And indeed there was a great joy for all of the Copts. And the late Patriarch, His Holiness Pope Carolus VI appointed Very Reverend Father Milan to be the first priest to serve the Coptic community here in Australia. I remember my father saying to me how sad it was when they first arrived and there was no service and there was no priest, and they would go to a hall that was hired from the Salvation Army, where the Coptic community at that time, who were just a few families, meeting together and praying together and singing hymns together and reading the Bible together, but it still did not have the same flavor as having their own church and having a permanent priest. I'm sure it was a very difficult job for him, even though I was still young at that time and don't have or cannot recall many of the early days, but I'm sure that it was through his hard work and through his love and through his strong faith that we have a lot to be thankful for when we see all of the development that has happened. Also, indeed, he was a pioneer in coming here in a different culture, in a different land, with a different language. It is very well known that he loved the rites of the church and the rituals of the church.
Father Mina was the first priest in Australia, and when he came here to Australia, he took care of everybody. He asked them to come to his home and reside for a while till he prepares a place for them. He starts to go to the different official offices and prepare everything for them concerning the welfare, social security, Medicare, and so on. That's why all the people here, I noticed, they loved Abuna Mina very much. When we came with Sayyidina al-Baba in the year 1989, I saw him for the first time.
As we know, the Bible teaches us that we should obey the authorities and honour them, because they wouldn't have any power or authority unless it was given to them by God. And one always felt that Abuna had a very high respect for the law and for the government, and treated it with that respect. He was certainly very capable and very much able to cope with dignitaries. He met the Queen at one stage, he met the Prime Minister at one stage, and he always carried himself with the greatest courtesy and good manners in those situations. Okay, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Abuna Mina's receiving the Order of Australia Medal. This was a very wonderful time for our church. Abuna Mina has been a pioneer in many things in the life of the church in Australia, and this was just one more thing in which he was the first. Of course, he was awarded the medal in recognition of the great service that he performed for the Coptic Church and the Coptic community in Australia, stretching right back to when he first arrived in 1969. He travelled all over Australia, to Melbourne, to Adelaide, to Perth, to pray masses for the very small number of Coptic families there until they had their own churches established. Abuna Mina also was instrumental in bringing over many, hundreds I think, of families of Copts from Egypt. He would send their names to the Australian government and get permission for them to emigrate, and then he would even go to the wharf and later on to the airport to receive them and to bring them back to Sydney to find accommodation for them, help them find work, schools for their children. So there are many, many families in Sydney up until today who remember Abuna Mina with great fondness and great gratitude, remembering how he gave them their start in Australia. Abuna Mina was also instrumental in starting up a number of parishes, as we know, St Mary and St Mina's, first at Sydenham, eventually at Bexley, St. George Church, St. Anthony's, which used to be St. Mark's, and of course our own parish of Archangel Michael and St. Bishoy. I think one of the things that always struck me about Abuna Mina receiving his award was that it showed the great honour and reverence that he paid to authorities. Abuna Mina received the award with his characteristic humility, with a smile on his face. One always felt that although he respected and honoured these things very much, and the governments and the authorities, but one always felt that deep in his heart he was still that same simple, family-hearted man who loved kids and loved to play with kids. The picture, when I see that, is I always imagine him sitting on his chair with children on his lap, playing and laughing with them and joking with them, teaching them the hymns and the alhan. And I think this was one of the lovely, lovely memories that I certainly keep and cherish in my heart. He certainly taught me that even if you are involved in doing great things, you always have to be a simple and humble-hearted person deep in your heart and in your home. We congratulated Abuna all those years ago on his Order of Australia medal, and I think even now, after he has left us and gone to paradise, the honour that he brought to our church still remains, and that's something that we will have and all of history will record for the future generations to come.
He was for sure Na'mat Allah Australia. Na'mat Allah, that's the grace of God. And he was for sure the grace of God to Australia. He was serving till the last breath in his life. He was serving despite he was very sick. As all of you know, he was a good example for the good shepherd that takes care of his flock. Teaching, preaching, praying, caring for them, sharing with them their lives. And he was all the time inside their homes and inside their hearts. Abuna Mina was marvelous and wonderful priest. I remember now and feel his cheerfulness, his smile, his big hug to everybody. He is a good father.
Abuna Mina, I hold great memories for you of every time we come to Sydney, how you invite us to your house and used to say that this is your house, this is the elders' father's house, and you used to always give us a meal, look after us, we have a laugh, we reminisce your lovely stories and your lovely memories. Blessed are you, Abuna Mina, and blessed are your memories that live with us always.
Abuna Mina, I was introduced to him early in the 90s when I first came to the Church of Archangel Michael and St. Bishoy, and I found him to be a symbol of strength. He was a man that is very strong in his stature and the way he speaks, the way he presents points, and developed high respect for Abuna Mina. And I loved his masses. His masses somehow attracted hundreds of people. He seemed to present a strong spiritual touch when he was praying the liturgy, and particularly when he prayed the Gregorian liturgy. I have one little thing that I can remember with Abu Namina that was really affected my life. And I think this great thing was one during some stage of my life where I started slacking off from being a deacon. And Abu Namina came up to me and he said, "Ya Fulan, أنت فاكر نفسك كبرت? Or do you think you're too old now to be a deacon?" And I said, "No, Abuna, I don't." Well, obviously inside me there was some kind of a feeling I'm too old now, I shouldn't be wearing a deacon. But these two words made a huge impact on my life. And the impact it made is that no matter how old you are a servant of Christ. Should never let any thought of being old. Sometimes some of the youth may go through this. Doesn't matter how old you are, you're still a servant of Christ. Abu Namina is someone that we'll never forget, and I ask him to remember us before the throne of God.
Talking about Abu Namina is never ending. Abu Namina is one of the treasures in the church, specifically in our church, Archangel Michael Church. Every place and everything and every person in the church has a memory from Abu Namina. Abu Namina established the church about 25 years ago. Until now, even the church that was standing in the English church, he left us this church, maybe haven't got the chance to pray in it, the English Mass, but he established it as he was thinking for the future. He was unbelievable father. He is that kind of person that he can gather the people around him and teach them a lot. The huge amount of deacons that we have now, Father Mina actually established all that, and Father Mina was the cause of all these deacons around. It's huge things that he've done for 32 or 33 years. Establishing churches or establishing Sunday schools everywhere, serving the sick people here and there. We learned from him a lot. I have served with Abu Namina long time ago, before priesthood, as a Sunday school servant, and after priesthood I have served with Abu Namina closely for 1 year, which was the last year in his life.
By his passing away today, an epoch of the history of our Coptic Orthodox Church here in Australia also passes, but yet his memory will always be with us all of our days.
كان لطيفا جدا ومتواضعا ووديعا، وكنت أخجل جدا عندما أراه يتلاشى أمام الأسقف، لأنه يعرف أنه وهو كاهن عليه أن يكون قدوة للشعب للمؤمنين باحترام رئاسة الكهنوت. عرفته جيدا وعرفته حقا المثال الطيب للكاهن التقي الذي يخاف الله، وللراعي الصالح الذي تعلم من الرب يسوع أن يبذل نفسه عن الخراف.